My name is Maggie Scott. I'm a textile artist, and I'm particularly interested in the negotiations that I make and other people make, people of colour who live in a white majority culture. I came across some pictures of my parents' wedding, and that began this process. I became fascinated because I was in the picture, and I had completely forgotten that I had been there when my mother remarried my stepfather. What was extraordinary to me is that that same year, just less than 5 miles away in Trafalgar Square in the centre of London, there was this enormous demonstration going on called Keep Britain White, with this huge banner. So now, at my age, I'm 56, looking back at that time, this young couple, so enthusiastic, in a period where no blacks, no dogs, no Irish was on most of the accommodation, I became very drawn to that story.
The image of Trafalgar Square, it was beautiful. It's like back home, we were told in England the streets are paved with gold. But you got here, you're looking for the streets with gold. There wasn't any.
The starting point was the wedding day, and then of course I pulled out all these snapshots, and I found one where I was looking extremely happy on the beach. And I chose to have those as a point of reference. So indeed, in these collages that are behind me, which I've called early messages, I've very specifically placed them at that period in my life. So in other words, that time as a young person, when you're receiving all this information and you're really not quite sure what to do with it. And so here I really want to talk about a young person negotiating things like Enid Blyton's book, The Three Golliwogs, and the black and white minstrel show. It was bewildering. You know, I didn't have a political consciousness at 5, but I was fed these kinds of images. And I suppose what I want to talk about here is how profound those early images are for all of us.
When I was younger, I read Enid Blyton's books, and there were golliwogs, and there were all sorts of things, but it didn't bother me. It was only after I grew up and understand certain things I read in books or papers that it was a bit offensive to people with a darker skin.
I've been asked quite a lot about the portraits of my mother. I wanted to use it as a metaphor to describe something that I feel very passionately about, and that is the disproportionate amount of people of colour in the mental health system. And my mother was also a victim of that. That was part of her story. I had a picture of her that was taken 2 or 3 weeks before she died, and I made a jigsaw of that image and slowly took it apart so that I could get these different stages. And that in and of itself was quite a curious exercise, because I'm dealing with an image of someone, of course, that's very close to me, and I'm spending a lot of time on the minutiae of her face, for example. So it was very emotional just in the making, the preparation for that picture. Anybody that knows anything about felt, you get very preoccupied with the technicality, so it just becomes to do with colour and shape and space. It's not until they were finished and up that I was able to re-engage again with the content and feel all those feelings that I had the first time over again.
Well, one of the pictures that I admired, it was Maggie's mother. It's sad because she was happy, you know, when she got married. And then at the end of it, it was sad because of what happened to her. And it makes you stop and think, why? You know, life shouldn't be like that. But it's just one of those things, it happens.
What I mean by internalized racism is the racism that is outside, that feeds you misinformation about yourself. We can take it right back to slavery, but I'm just even talking for my generation, that the whiter you were, the more acceptable you were. And I really wanted to focus on that in the installation because the beautification industry has really targeted, particularly young people, this notion that you have to be fixed. You're not all right the way you are. You have to change your hair, you have to change your skin. And the pressures are enormous and incredibly hard to resist. So part of what I'm hoping to achieve with this exhibition is to open that dialogue, to move from what is the racism? Is this, am I carrying anything? To, I'm running that one, let's clean it up. And the skin lightening one is a very clear example of that, that it's presented as if it's completely normal for you to want to lighten your skin.
People always kind of talk about it, but it's like they're a bit coward to say it. But now that this exhibition came along, people will be more open to say what they think.
Why is it a black person want to change from creation? If you're black, stay black, because black is beautiful.
I think what's interesting and what's become very apparent preparing this exhibition is how, for myself, I've been able to shift some of that internalized racism. So in that sense, I hope that, and in certainly the feedback I've had so far, that it's not just people of colour that have been moved by the images. Lots of different identities have had stories to tell me relating to this and how they've had to negotiate their way through. So it is my story, but I hope it's also your story.
I think this is a wonderful exhibition. I'm absolutely blown over. I think Maggie Scott is just showing genius.
I wish more of us had her idea of bringing things like that across to other people.
I was expecting something that was obviously tactile because of the nature of the textiles, and I was expecting something which was going to be about black and white, but actually it's multifaceted, many shades of interest.
You've got to be yourself at all times, because if you're not going to survive. You've got to show yourself as who you are and not try to be somebody else. You've got to be yourself at all times, yes.